This is Robert Goodman here on TikTok. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. Confessions of my recovery. It's always a pleasure to share my strength and hopes with you. And it's always a pleasure of me watching and seeing the things that you post about recovery, which fortifies my belief that together we can stay clean and sober. Today, I want to talk about I have no control over nobody else but myself. You know, when I was in my addiction, I thought I had control because I had the bag and I had some money. But I realized that the bag had control over me and everybody else that was addicted. And as I got into recovery, I found out that I have no control over people, places, or things. But I do have control over myself if I pay attention to myself. Well, the thing is, if Robert doesn't pay attention to himself, then his mind only operates on what is good for Robert, what makes him feel good, what makes him feel better. So I make these decisions based on these feelings and what my mind tells me. But actually, my mind was duping me to make bad choices. It's like in my addiction, the bag made me feel better. My body told my mind I needed this, so you make sure I get this and everything is going to be okay. So the addiction controlled me and left me into a vicious cycle that kept me in addiction for 40 years. So I have to change my behavior. I have to teach myself a new way of living. And I have no idea what that is because I was wrapped up in my addiction. So I take the steps into recovery. I finally realized that my way was not working. I need help. And it seems like those people over there, they have recovery. They have beds I can sleep. They got food. It's an in-house program. I can feel safe. And they have 90-day programs. So I think that's something that I want to try. My main purpose when I was getting walking into the program of recovery is because I was tired. I was beaten down. I'm weary of fighting to get food every day. I'm fighting to use the bathroom. I'm fighting to wash myself. I'm fighting every day just to live a normal life in my addiction, just to have the basics. Since I was homeless, nobody wanted me to come into their business and use their bathroom because people that are homeless, there's a group of people that use public bathrooms and they destroy them. Some lock themselves in there and they sleep in there. Some people OD in there. They use and they overdose. So these things happen, and these businesses want to protect themselves. So for a person that's homeless is just trying to get themselves together to wash themselves up a little bit so they don't stink or use the bathroom instead of going behind the dumpster somewhere. And it's almost non existent. But I remember when I was in my active addiction and I was homeless, and what I would do is I would go get them asked to speak to the manager, and I would speak to the manager privately and told him my situation and told him that I will clean up behind myself. I will clean the bathroom. I will clean it before I use it. I will clean before after I finish, and I will buy me something to eat. And I would like to do this every day. And the interesting thing is that they said yes. A Carl's Jr. manager said yes to me. A Starbucks manager said yes to me. And as a matter of fact, at the Starbucks, they asked me, uh, would I kind of stick around when I have time and just make sure that people don't abuse the bathrooms situations. They said, you're homeless, so you know all the ones that are causing problems and the ones that are not. So my base of operations was at the Starbucks. And I kept the bathroom clean. And when I used it and changed my clothes like I normally did, and if somebody came in there and was acting other than they should, and I would put them in check. Some people threatened the staff workers, and I would step in and do what I do best. And I would always relieve the problem. And it was a place where I felt that I was respected and they treated me like a human being. So I was constantly always there. I would go to work in the morning and I would stop there and I would go to Fry's and I would buy me something to eat and I would come back to the Starbucks and I would sit there, eat. I watch me a movie or two, and then I would get on the light rail and ride the light rail and sleep on the light rail. And gets to the last stop, and then I'll get off and I'll fiddle around, and then I'll wait for the next light rail to go back down, and so on. And this was my routine. But I appreciated the kindness that these people gave me in my addiction. But I owned up to have respect for their business, and I also respected myself. And I never had an issue. Matter of fact, one business, when my phone would go get low, I would leave my phone there and they would charge my phone and I would come back in 2 hours and pick it up. And this is what I had to do just to live life on life's terms in my addiction. But I got tired of that lifestyle. I really did. But this was the only thing that was working at the time for me. And so I did that. I saved up a lot of money. I saved, well, not a lot of money. I saved up $5,000, and I wanted to. I was looking for a studio, and I was ready to slide up in one. But I went to jail for aggravated assault, and I explained the situation in the video before. And all the money that I saved, which took me 18 months, gone, and I was back to square one. I knew that Robert couldn't do what he did in them 18 months again. I knew I was not physically capable or mentally capable of handling that stress over again. So I made a conscious decision to go into a program of recovery, a work program, which I made arrangements. I was making arrangements to supposedly going to a halfway house through probation. And I talked to the people that was in the jail and the social worker, and they said everything is set and everything. And when I got my release papers and everything, all I got was a month bus pass. So I was lied to. I was duped. They just told me that dream just to pacify me. And my release date is too late. There's nothing that can be done. So I went to Bridges, and I went to their place, and I had to go through the hoops of the 24-hour period and all that stuff dealing with them. And they contact a work program, and they made arrangements, and they took me there, and that's where I started my journey again in recovery. And this time it stuck. The reason I guess it stuck because I didn't want to take myself through that trip anymore. I finally gave up. I finally decided that I rather do things the right way than do things the wrong way and suffer. See, when I was making bad choices, that's because I wasn't paying attention to myself. I was acting on feelings and emotions and not facts and information. So as I grew in my recovery, there's one rule that I always started with. Robert just did the next right thing, whether he liked it or not. I just did the next right thing. It became a routine. I said, all I concerned myself was not getting high in a 24-hour period. I'm Today I choose not to get high. Today, I'm going to do the next right thing. The next day, Robert, you were clean and sober the day before. You did an excellent job. Do the same thing today. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, months turned into years. And the longer I stayed in my recovery, the longer I learned just how little power I truly have over myself and others. Over myself, if I do not pay attention to myself, then I will not have power over myself. I will act on feelings and emotions and not facts. But if I pay close attention to myself, then I will act on facts and not feelings. But if I don't pay attention to myself, I'll act on feelings and emotions. And recovery taught me that. This is Robert Goodman here, Confessions of My Recovery here on TikTok. I'm so happy that you're a part of my recovery. I see y'all. I'm so happy that you're a part of it. I'm so happy that you're here. I hope that what I say will help you along in your recovery. And I appreciate your posts and your thoughts on recovery. This truly has been an inspiration to my recovery. Now, let me get back to it. Recovery taught me that I have very little power over all that goes on around me. I have very little power on everything that goes along around me. Now, if I want to keep it immediate, I have no power over my wife. I have no power over people, places, or things. But I can have power over myself if I pay attention to myself. If I do not pay attention to myself, then I will not have power over myself and I will just react to a situation. Recovery taught me that, boy, you better pay attention to yourself because you duped yourself for 40 years. You con yourself to live in a vicious cycle of addiction. You. You had control over your choices and you choose to make bad ones. That means you really wasn't paying attention to yourself because you was making bad choices. And when I look back in my addiction, I was just trying to survive. I didn't have time enough to make sound good choices. I was just trying to survive. It was work trying to find a bathroom where you didn't piss outside or shit outside. And then you had to worry if the police see you, you're going to jail for indecent exposure. And then some judges may give you a sex charge. So, yeah. But businesses didn't want you to use unless they truly had an idea that you was a decent person. And I always went out of my way to where I used the bathroom to clean myself or to relieve myself. I always cleaned up before I used it and cleaned up after I used it. I always left the bathroom better than it was. because I knew as soon as I left, they're gonna go in there and look. And by me doing that, they never questioned me about using the bathroom, for cleaning myself, or using it. They treated me with respect. And some of them treated me with some concern and love too. So, what I'm trying to say is that you don't have as much power as you think you do. Because if I don't watch Robert and his choices and his decisions, then he's going to make bad choices and he's going to end up falling down that rabbit hole. Another thing I learned in my recovery is that there are people that loved us while we was doing bad. There are people that loved us while we was in our active addiction. There are people that wish we were still in our active addiction. Why? Some because we used to get high with them. Others just used us as a sounding board to justify their actions against us by showing up and sharing our pain regularly to us and others. Always throwing the mud. You know he ain't no good, stuck on them drugs. And they love slinging the mud about you because some people get off on doing that. Some people just can't stand you and can't wait to tell your mistakes, your faults, your issues. But when I got into recovery and I changed my behavior and I lived a different life, I owned up to my mistakes. I faced my fears. I went through the pain because I went through the emotions of crying and being upset and not liking myself and hating myself. And that's when the program of recovery told me that we will love you until you can love yourself. And when I seen all the pain that I'd done to myself and others, I could not love myself. I was unable to love myself because I had so much hatred for myself. But on the flip side, recovery was teaching me a gratitude list. The things I accomplished from addiction into recovery and where I'm at today. And they told me to constantly repeat it and add the other things that have gratitude for, the blessings that recovery has given me. And I would start from the beginning and add some more, and I would say it all until I started to feel different about myself. I started to like myself because Robert was changing. Robert wasn't that crazy addictive fool anymore. He's a recovered addict. He's doing what he needs to do to stay clean and sober. He's facing his issues today, and his life's getting better. At this point, I wasn't desire a fix. I didn't desire to get high. I started to like who I was. And being associated in the program of recovery, people started navigating towards me and wanting to be around me and to socialize with me, which made me feel good about myself. And all of a sudden, without me realizing it, I started loving myself. I didn't know when it happened, but all of a sudden, I started loving myself. I started to realize that I had a disease, that it wasn't all my fault. Yes, it's my fault that I started this process, but I had a disease which kept me down in the rabbit hole, destroying myself and others. So I came to that point in my recovery that I like you, Robert. You're different. I like that person that you become now. I can see the goodness in you. And as I was feeling good about myself and having gratitude about myself, when I would hear my fellow addict share their strength and hopes, there were times when tears would run down my eyes because I understood the pain and the remorse and the hurt they was feeling. And I would show compassion to my fellow addict. Then, without me realizing it, I'm sharing recovery with this person. I'm sharing love this person. A love to love them until they can love themselves. The same thing that was done to me, I'm doing to somebody else and didn't even realize it until I did it. Recovery is a beautiful thing. It's just like in addiction, you didn't know when you crossed over. You don't remember when, but you crossed over. And it's the same thing in recovery. You don't realize when you crossed over into recovery until you truly say, this is what I want to do. You don't realize when it happens, it just happens and you're there. And you can't see yourself living nowhere else but in recovery. And you created a new way of living for yourself. You have genuine people that care about you. In your active addiction, people didn't care about you. They only wanted the bag, or they wanted some money from you so they can get the bag, or they want to do whatever they need to do so you can get them some free dough. But the bottom line is the bag had the control. You didn't, but you thought you did. Why? Because you wasn't paying attention to yourself. In the program of recovery, they say play the whole tape through. Meaning stop duping yourself and be honest with yourself of what you've done and what you've experienced in your addiction and how far you've come from your addiction. Now, My recovery is my recovery. Me working on my recovery is means that I'm selfish, that this is the foremost important thing for me to do is to work on myself. That is my responsibility. That is my job as a recovering addict is to constantly keep the focus on myself and stay clean and sober. And also, I must help others because the 12 steps says after having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So, in order to keep it, I have to give it away. And how do you give it away? Sharing, connecting with the newcomer. They're a new way. They're a new way of living. It's their new way. This is the way they live. They don't know the blessings and the gratitude that recovery has for them until they walk that path themselves. Remember when you first came in, understand the pain and the remorse and the hurt, how beat up you was? They're feeling the same thing. Now, you don't want to act like the boss at a job. You want to flux your weight around, let everybody know you're in charge and everything. So you don't want to have the same type of attitude in recovery. Yeah, well, I got years. You don't know what you're talking about. You need to follow what I do because I got it. I know. I know. I know the formula. But the program says, I only know a little. In time, more will be revealed to me. So when I think I know too much, I'm setting myself up to relapse. Because the program says, I only know a little. I'm only going to learn a little. But a power greater than myself will give me more information to help me stay clean and sober and to help other addicts reach the same thing. So, what it's saying is, I need to stay humble. I need to stay humble in recovery. And if I stay humble in recovery, then my life will get better. I will not fall back down the rabbit hole. And I will understand just how powerful addiction truly is. I won't get a big head and say, I know everything. I won't get a big head and say, I have the formula for everybody to make it. Where the program of recovery tells me is that I take, I listen, take what I need out of the meeting and leave the rest there because everything that is shared is not solely for me. So if it's not everything is not solely for me, is that means that it comes back to I only know a little. More will be revealed to me if I stay clean and sober. After having an awakening as a result of these steps, I try to carry this message to Addison to practice these principles in all my affairs. So if I'm sharing about recovery, I'm keeping it alive and free in my heart and in my mind. And I have some information that may help somebody along in their recovery. And that's it. That is truly it. I keep the focus on Robert. I keep checking myself regularly each and every day. That's how I stay clean and sober. Also, I remember where I came from because I'm acting with my fellow recovering addicts, which allows me to remember where I came from. It allows me to know that addiction is free and rampant. When I hear people that relapse, it lets me know I can relapse too if I don't pay attention to myself and my program of recovery. I'm keeping it fresh. But if I don't, then this mind of mine will fall back to the old habits and the old ways. Because the old ways and the old habits, I've been doing that for a very long time. But recovery, I have not been doing it that long a time. I've been living in active addiction longer than I've been clean sober. So I must pay close attention to myself because it's so easy for me to fall back into the program of addiction and pick up. And one of the tools that they always say to you is play the tape through, play the whole tape through. See, your mind will say, you know what, you had the greatest time. Remember, you had the greatest time. You did this, that, this. Yeah. But you left out the part that the police came in there and you got 5 years and you were stuck in jail. See, you didn't want to talk about that. You only talk about the pleasure of the getting, the using, and having a good time. But you're not saying how it ended up where you had to do 5 years. So that's an example of playing the tape all the way through. Be honest with ourselves about our addiction and what it has done. Because the only way you and me can stay clean and sober if we pay attention to ourselves and our recovery. See, our recovery is my recovery is my recovery. Your recovery is your recovery. What you do for your recovery to make you stay clean and sober, that works for you. What I do for my recovery works for me. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't know what's going to work for you. And the reason why is because I don't live in your skin. I don't know what life has done to you. I don't know what type of traumas you've experienced in your life. I have nothing to tell me how to keep you clean and sober. But you do. You know the things that has happened to you. You know what you need. The problem is, will you make the steps to do that? Will you honestly look at yourself and change your behavior? That is your choice. That is your way. Just like it's my job. My job is I can't save nobody. I can save Robert, but I can't save nobody. But what I can do, I can tell you what works for me, what works for Robert. I made these mistakes, so I tell you so you don't make the same mistakes. But the bottom line is you have to find out what works for you because that's the only way you're going to have a rooted and grounded recovery that's going to last because you honestly look at yourselves, you honestly do the work that you need to do on yourself, and know why you got high in the first place. What caused you to get high in the first place? And once you realize that, the thing that you was running from, if you go face it head on and go through whatever you need to go through to get to the other side, once you do that, you're on your way to a very powerful, strong recovery. I had to face my traumas and I had to face my fears. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't easy. It was emotional. It was mentally draining. I never felt so weak and betrayed by my addiction, by myself. I betrayed myself. I betrayed my beliefs, the things that I believed in. Recovery taught me to look at myself in my addiction. And I understand why, because once I looked at it, not being high and looking at what I've done to others and myself, I never wanted to do that to myself or anybody else ever again. And when I listened to the stories that my fellow brothers and sisters told me in recovery, and when I listened to some of the stories and I thought about my recovery, I realized what I've done to people in my addiction. And I had a lot of compassion for my fellow brothers and sisters in recovery because I realized that I contribute to people's addiction. I abuse people in addiction. And it made me humble about my situation. It made me humble to take the cotton out my ears and put it in my mouth and listen to my fellow addict, to show compassion and love and empathy to my fellow recovering addict, to be a part of his recovery and not a part of his addiction. And as I acquired time in recovery and I acquired more compassion for my fellow addicts, led me to do what I'm doing today. Because I did a lot of damage in 40 years. And my personal belief is that the hell that a person that's addicted is that you don't die, you just live in addiction. That is hell. That is hell. I believe if you OD, you're taken out of your misery. But if you got to live that misery each and every day for the rest of your life without ODing, I think that's the worstest part of hell. That's a piece of hell that I wouldn't wish on nobody because the longer I stay in recovery, the more I look back at them 40 years and something new always pops up that I remember that I didn't remember a year ago or 2 years ago. There's always something that pops up that keeps me humble and lets me know that I got to help another recovering addict so they don't suffer like I suffer. This is Robert Goodman, TikTok here, Confessions of My Recovery. I hope that I shared something that will help you in your recovery. It's been a pleasure to share my strength and hopes with you. And remember this, you are the most important person to yourself. And I say this a lot of times. And I want you to understand and I want you to realize that you are the most important person to yourself. When you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror, that's the person you should be grateful for because you came out of addiction. So look that person in the mirror and say, thank you. I appreciate you for giving me another day clean and sober. I appreciate you for building the life that I have today. And if you keep doing it each and every day, eventually you'll wake up with a smile on your face and look in the mirror and you don't have to say nothing. You'll just feel it. You'll just feel it. So if you are clean and sober today, pat yourself on the back. Work on the rest of today, stay clean and sober, and you got this day, that's 24 hours up and under your belt. And remember, only you can stay clean and sober if you keep the focus on you. Y'all have a great and wonderful day.